This episode of Storycomic Presents is sponsored by JanusPointPress.com. Watch out for wormholes. Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 323. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com. We're excited to have with us the internationally celebrated indie comic legend and owner of Reckless Sidekick Productions, Keith Gleason.
Hey, Barney. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Keith. It's like, we were talking before we went on the show that, we've known each other since 2017.
Yeah.
Back in the Vermont Comic Con days is when you had your table set up. And I was mentioning that you inspired me when I started seeing that because you had such a great way you set up your table. You had, talk about that. And then we'll talk about your history, but you had such a, little snippet of advice on how to attract potential new readers to your table.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I would actually say for any listeners out there, if you go to YouTube and go to my YouTube channel, which is Indie Comics Relay, yeah. I did a series of videos on like setting up at conventions and different things that I do. There's probably about 8 to 10 videos there, just talking about different aspects of setting up at conventions and shows. And I think the one that you're referring to is the signs that I made up, So at the time I had, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 books. And I actually stole this from someone else. So it's like, and I talk about that too. Like if you see a good idea, start incorporating it into your own setup, so right. Like I do that often. I'm still learning at conventions. Sometimes I'll see something and I'll be like, oh, I like how that guy did that, so and then I'll kind of like, I'm like the Blob, I just take it in, and it becomes part of my being, but what you're referring to is the signs. So like I a lot of people that go to conventions now are, I'd say about half of them aren't comic book fans, but I think some of them are open to trying comics. And so like I started these signs like, almost like a TV pitch or something where it's like, if you like this show, you might like this comic, and I point right. down to the comic on the sign. For example, I think I did, let me see, with my Hero Envy comic, which is sort of like a geek comedy, but it's like got some sci-fi elements to it. I kind of said, if you like Big Bang Theory mixed with like Rick and Morty, you might like this book, because it has like the Rick and Morty humor, and it has the geeks kind of like Big Bang Theory, so right. And a lot of those signs, like I made signs for every book, and it does help you sell, especially if you're talking to somebody and people are walking by, they can still see the sign. Right. And I also suggest, stealing the logos from the actual thing that you're talking about. So with Big Bang Theory, I took their logo, and I also took the Rick and Morty logo, so I don't know. It was a good setup for a long time, and I used that for years, but now like I kind of don't use it anymore because I have so many books now. Like, I have 9 issues of Mighty Mascots alone.
Wow.
And then I have a couple of graphic novels. So I almost don't have room for the signs anymore. Right. And you don't want to kill people with signs everywhere, so you just want to keep it simple,
So I mean, so Mighty Mascots then is kind of like your masthead title?
I would say, yeah. At this point, it wasn't before, but it is now. Like in the last like 5 years, it's become my primary book, I guess you would say,
So talk to us a little bit about what the concept is of Mighty Mascots.
So it's basically a love letter to Saturday morning cartoons and Marvel comics, well, even any comics of like the 70s and 80s. So it's about a bunch of serial mascots, and they're brought to life by a 3D printing accident, and they become like a superhero team. So so I know I always get a laugh when I say the concept to people, but I so I think it's heavily inspired by like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or like even Batman the animated series. So it's kind of like it's got an absurd concept like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but often like that cartoon, they always treated it kind of seriously.
Right.
So I kind of do the same thing. Like I take this absurd concept, treat it kind of seriously, and then write a good superhero epic around it, you know? So it's a fun book to write, man. It's like you know what they always say is like when you create something, you want to create something that you would love and then also like that could appeal to a mass audience. And I think this is the book, you know, for me anyways, you know, because I have
So
ideas, a couple of years worth of ideas anyways, you know.
so how often do you produce
So
these
I was
issues?
doing 3 a year.
Wow,
Um,
okay.
but I think I'm going to slow down because 3 a year is a kind of tough with everything I'm doing, you know, because I
Right.
got the convention on top of that. And I got lettering that I do on the side as well. So I think I'm going to try to just produce one here and there. And if it ends up being 3 a year, great. If not, that's fine too. Because I was trying to do 3 at once. So I would do all 3 scripts, all 3, you know, thumbnails and everything. But it's so much hard. And I think it's also kind of stressful for the artists a little bit because I noticed like the first issue, the artwork is great. And then the second one, it starts to get a little not sloppy, but you could tell like they're doing a little less of the backgrounds and you know what I mean? So I feel if you do one issue at a time, give them a little
Right.
break and then start over, I think it's probably a better, you know, better way to do it, you know?
And so because you write it, but you don't you're not the artist on these ones.
Correct. Yeah. I only do the art on the Swamp Tales book, and
Right.
that's because my art style is very cartoony, very like Charles Schultz or Jim Davis kind of look, you know. And I have a hard time drawing not only perspective but also like realistic anatomy, you know, like realistic like superhero anatomy. So I guess like I kind of know my strengths, and so like when I want like a book that looks more like a traditional superhero book, I hired out the artist, you know. So so far the
Right.
art team's been with me for all 9 issues, which is great, you know. So I'm gonna try to keep them as long as I can, you know. So
Right. And you mentioned it's an ongoing series, or does it have a definitive end to it?
yeah, it's ongoing. I mean, I guess I could end it at any time. I kind of I don't really have an ending in sight, but I you know I could make one of for sure, you know. Um, but I feel it's like more like an ongoing kind of story where
Right.
it's like, I mean, there's a million like brand mascots, and a lot of the villains tend to be like other brand mascots. So like, I mean, there's so many ideas that I can take and just twist to my comic, you know. Like to give you an example, the first story arc, the villains do you remember, I don't know if you remember this, like in the 70s they used to have on TV they had these Crest commercials for the toothpaste, but they were animated and they were done by like Jack Kirby, and it was
Huh.
like the Cavity Creeps. Do you remember that? Do you remember those commercials? So I used them as the villains in the first mini series, which is the first 3 issues. And some people got who it was, you know, which was cool to see, you know. And then I think in the issues 4, 5, and 6, the villains were video game guys. Like we had an evil Mario, and an evil Donkey Kong. You know, so it was kind of fun to just kind of part of the fun of the book for me is make taking a real mascot and kind of finding my own version of it, which both pays homage to the original, but also is a whole different character that can kind of stand on its own. You know. So
Right.
I think that's, you know, so I like doing that kind of stuff, you know. So But yeah, it's a fun book to write, and I love writing like the little drama and like the story arcs and the character arcs, things like that, you know. So yeah, I have a blast with it. It's like one of my it's out of everything I've done, it's probably the funnest comic to write because it's everything I loved as a kid, you know. So
Right.
I think that's why it keeps me interested in into it, you know. So
So talk about the world building aspect of it. How did you know? You mentioned there was like a freak, accident, a cereal box accident. Is that what perpetuated the expansion of other mascots? Like, so it wasn't
okay.
like a one-off thing that happened. Then I take it.
No, so there's like so in the first mini series you actually find out in the second issue that there's an evil kind of corporation where the mascots were created. So it's like kind of like an evil, like a, I wouldn't say like a Lex Luthor type, but there's like this woman who's called Dr. Baneful, and she's she runs like this scientific kind of conglomerate kind of thing, and the 3D printed formula was created there in this organization. And what ends up happening, you find out in as their origin is like the person who created it was basically being hunted by Baneful and her crew because he created this amazing like 3D printing formula that's actually like an actual formula. And when he tries to hide it, he puts it into the their local break room or whatever, and inside the cabinet is all these cereal boxes, and it pours on the cereal boxes and creates all these guys, and then they escape the corporation. But in the first issue, she takes the formula from this guy, and she decides to do a field test on it by putting it inside of supermarket sprinkler system. She uses these thugs to put it in there. And when the sprinkler goes off, it sprays all the
Oh
products in the
wow!
store. So it kind of creates this massive influx of brand mascots, which you don't know at the time is that's happening in the background as, the current storylines unfolding. And you also find out that she had taken the formula and did something to the engineering of it to like kind of give all these mascots have kind of like anyone that's created with her formula has kind of like they're kind of angry, like they come out like as villains almost, right away. So
Right.
it's like kind of like them on hunting all these guys that were created. So it's kind of like one of those kind of stories, like an old television kind of storyline. You know what I mean? Like the Hulk or something, or even
Right.
X-Files would be a better examples, like where there's like a
Like a monster of the week kind of
monster of the week
situation.
kind of thing. And sometimes there's multiple issues in the storyline, or there's just one shots and things like that. So um but yeah, no, it's a lot of fun to try to figure out how it all kind of comes together. And I love how each issue builds the world even more. So yeah,
So I'm
I'm
really curious about this, about being the cereal box mascot. It's like, did you have to come up with the flavor of cereal, or did you come up with a mascot first to combine with a flavor
I
of
did both
cereal?
actually.
Really?
So I know every mascot and every cereal that they are part of, which is a lot of fun. Um and when I do create like even the evil mascots, I figure out that aspect of it. It's almost like when an actor gets into the what is it, like method acting, and they try to figure out every little angle of everything. I do the same. When I create the character, I try to figure out how it all works, and things like that. So I real fun in the last two issues. The last two I made, issues 8 and 9. The villains are kind of like a version of the Jolly Green Giant and Sprout. So like so my version is like grumpy orange Goliath. So short is like Gog. And then the Colonel is the instead of the Sprout, it's a kernel of corn that's like kind of like a military theme, called the Colonel, but it's spelled Kernel.
Okay.
But they were really fun to create. And then I created I figured they needed like a Commissioner Gordon type, so I used McGruff the crime dog. I created my
Oh,
own
that's
version of that.
awesome.
You remember McGruff?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's kind of fun. I think that's part of the fun of the series is people reading it and trying to figure out who I'm kind of parodying or paying homage to.
So do they do the mass do they have there's there superpowers involved, or they're just like brought to life without superpowers?
Yeah, some of them have. I'm like, well, the pirate, which is supposed to be like Captain Crunch, is he's more like a Batman type. He has a lot of a lot of weapons and trinkets, and he has like a mechanical parrot named Sea
Uh-huh.
Rat that kind of looks like uh, Toucan Sam, a little bit with his nose and stuff. But the alien is super intelligent, has a lot of inventions, things like that. And then there's the bear who's just super strong and has the claws. And then the three robots are kind of like a little bit like Voltron. They all three on their own are powerful, but then when they combine into a bigger robot too, so named
Okay.
Mega Crunch.
Mega Crunch. Oh, I love it.
So yeah, it's and then I they have their human guy that's their sort of like mentor who used
Okay.
to be it's a tribute to Gary Coleman. Basically, he's like a former child star who turned scientist, and he
Okay.
kind of his fate is tied to theirs when all the stuff goes down in the when they're first created, basically in the lab. His friend is the one that created the formula, and his friend gets killed, so he kind
Okay.
of comes together with them, and then they kind of become a team together, I guess.
And so I'm curious, with the bear, is the bear like a cinnamon flavored
Yeah.
cereal?
Yeah. Yeah, I can go. Let me see. So the bear is like his name is Boxer Bear. He's kind
Okay.
of like a tribute to Tony the Tiger or Sugar
Okay.
Bear, something like that.
Okay.
And his cereal is Cinnamon Smackers, and the
That's
tagline
awesome.
is "I'll box you for a bowl." And then the pirate is Captain Horatio Honey Flakes, and his cereal is Honey Flakes, crispy Honey Flakes.
Right.
And the tagline for that cereal is "Set sail for flavor."
That's awesome.
And the alien is kind of a deep cut. Do you remember a cereal called Quisp?
Oh, Quisp, yes, he had almost like a snorks,
Yeah,
like
yeah, it was like
hat
a
on. Yeah.
weird little alien type.
Yeah.
So Mondo, that's Mondo Martian, and I think his cereal was it was something like space saucers or something like that.
Right.
And then the three robots are Whack, Smack, and Boom. So they kind of have a alliteration, kind of like Rice Krispie,
You're
Snap,
right.
Crackle,
Snap,
Pop.
Knuckle Pop. Yeah.
And their cereal is Bionic Bites, and it's I think it's like the tagline something like vitamins, minerals, and taste combined for ultimate satisfaction or something like that. Oh, I take it back. I think Mondo's cereal was Star Crunch. That's what it was.
Star Crunch.
Star Crunch.
Watch out for wormholes, because a good book is a wormhole, whether it's paper or pixels. Explore our artist books and chapbooks, including the winning 2022 Chautauqua Janus Prize Lecture at januspointpress.com. And sign up for news of our upcoming sci-fi, sensual, and literary collection, Event Horizon. This short story collection on cosmic decisions and their impact is written by award-winning author Stephanie Nina Pizzarillos and features comics, prose, photography, and original canvas work by an array of exciting artists. Visit januspointpress.com. What was the point to say listen, we're gonna stick with 4 or 5 characters because it's basically what you did is you wrote a like so you basically wrote a super team comic, and when that happens, how do you know what's the appropriate number of characters?
Gotcha. Yeah. So I use like sort of like the Justice League as sort of a guideline.
Okay.
Justice League, it's always been, you know, when there's not a ton of stuff going on, if it's just the core team, it's always 7 people basically, and they all
Mm,
kind of fill like a need. You know what I mean? Like, so there's the one I didn't mention that's on the team also that's not a serial mascot is a version of the Kool-Aid Man. It's his name's Brewster McPunch, and he's sort of like the comic relief, kind of like the way either the Flash was or Plastic Man. They would always be like kind of like the comic relief. Then you
right.
always had the Bruiser and the strong guy, which was always Superman. But on my team, it's Boxer Bear. And then, you know, you have Honey Flakes, who kind of fills the Batman role,
Right.
and then so on and so forth. They all kind of fill their own niche. And you always had the smart guy, which was the alien, you know. So I kind of used that. There's a lot of super teams have like those archetypes. If you ever notice, like even Avengers kind of has similar kind of
Yeah.
veins to it. And I would say this team is a little more on the weirder side, more like a Doom Patrol or remember Metal Men, something like
Yeah.
that, you know, where it's like you have the wacky professor and then like this wacky group of characters, you know, all coming together and fighting the good fight, I guess, you know. But yeah, that's sort of how I kind of based it off of that, like trying to come up with my own versions of things like that, you know. 'Cause I don't feel like there's no superpower that hasn't been done yet, you know. So it's like you kind of try to find your own niche in that world, I guess, you know.
It does bring up that once you kind of mention that example of like the Justice League and the Avengers and stuff, is that then I kind of realized that there really isn't a lot of mascots, cereal box mascots that are female. They're all
No,
male.
there's not. Although I did introduce a female character in the first 3 issues, or in the second issue she makes an appearance at the very end, and then the third issue she's like fully in it. But like I was looking for that because I wanted to add like, you know, female kind of perspective to the series. So I thought, you know, you the Land O'Lakes girl would make a great a great hero, you know, like just an awesome badass like Indian warrior princess kind of type, you know.
Right.
And especially with that, they just did that Predator movie called Prey with the Indian girl, and
Right.
it was along those lines. I thought, like, you know, I had the character before that movie came out, but when that movie did come out, I asked the artist to start designing her to look like that movie, you know, like that character. So yeah, so I have her as like the female kind of thing, and she's one of those Ronin types where she kind of goes off on her own and then kind of comes back, and you know,
Right.
one of those type of characters you see once in a while. And I may have her come in and join the team for a little bit with the
Right.
upcoming issues, because I'm building towards a bigger storyline. So I feel she would come in and kind of help them out, you
Right.
know, this huge menace that's going to be coming, you know, kind of thing.
Compared to the like Mighty Mascots and like the whole like Gleason verse here, like how does this compare to some of your other titles?
The first comic I did was Hero Envy, which was a 3 issue miniseries, and that one is a geek comedy. Basically, it's about 4 geeks that they have to go on this mission. Like there's like a you know, like the Watcher, the Watcher from Marvel.
Yeah.
They get contacted by YouTube, the Pointer, who's like, he doesn't watch events, he points at them. So he has to find 4 of the biggest losers in the universe to go on this mission, and he finds these 4 guys and puts them on this storyline. Now the funny thing is this started, so before it was a comic book, this was actually a web series that me and my friends not only starred in, but we also wrote, acted, filmed it, produced
Oh,
it.
wow.
Yeah, we made like almost 30 episodes on our own. They're not very good and they're very un-PC. Like this is, we're going back like early 2000s, where you could,
Right.
say and do anything. A lot of the stuff in that series is not really kosher nowadays, I guess,
Yeah.
a lot of like jokes and, a lot of like offensive humor kind of thing. But
Right.
um we had stopped doing the web series, but I still wanted to write the characters. So I was like, let's do a comic. And so I did. That was the first 3 issues I ever did. Took me 5 years to produce all three of those. I mean, I was just learning though to make comics and stuff. So I was sort of like George Lucasing it. I was like every little thing I was trying to fix or tweak, So I've kind of learned to make that process a lot faster, I guess. So
Right.
that's kind of like its own thing. And then
Well,
Swamp
Swamp
Tales.
Tales. Yeah. Right.
Now that was a comic strip that I at one point I was pitching. I was trying to get that into newspapers. I was pitching it around, trying to get it syndicated and out into the world. But like, how the newspaper business is, it's pretty much dying and no one's looking for new comics.
Right.
So for a while I did a website in the 90s with all these comic strips that I made on it. And they were just kind of sitting around and I was like, you know what? Let me reformat these and re-letter them and I can release them as a comic book. So I had 3 issues worth of comic strips that I had just made. Sometimes I made, and with the new, when I put them in comic form, I actually made a couple new ones to kind of, you know, even it all out so that you would have like 3 full issues of content. And
Right.
so that's something I might go back to. I like those characters and I like doing comic strips. I love doing the setup gag kind of thing that you see in a Sunday newspaper. So that's pretty much what Swamp Tales is. And then I hired artist Chris Gugliotti to do the covers for me. And so that's what you see there is the covers that he made for me. And it's really fun stuff. So
Right.
that one's a lot of fun. And then what other books I have? I started a book called Reckless Chronicles and Kid Switch, which I hope
Right.
to get back to one of these days. Kid Switch was supposed to be a 4-issue miniseries, and I've only ever actually made the first issue, but I have 2 and 3 and most of 4 written. It's just I got to go
Okay.
back and actually. So what ended up happening is that Mighty Mascots. So I was doing Kid Switch and then I was doing Reckless Chronicles at the same time. And Reckless Chronicles has the first 2 Mighty Mascots stories. And I started pitching that around. And then Mighty
Okay.
Mascots got picked up by Alterna Comics at the time. So I stopped doing all my other books and just focused on making Mighty Mascots. And now that I'm away from Alterna and out of my contract, this just happened this year, so I'm trying to get back to like, still making Mighty Mascots issues, but also going back and maybe finishing Kid Switch at some point, and then also maybe
Hmm.
finish. I have another concept I want to make into a comic, so I got all these ideas brewing. So I got a million. So Reckless Chronicles was supposed to be an anthology series where I wrote all 3 stories in the issue. And it
Okay.
was supposed to be one of the stories was a sequel to Hero Envy. One of the stories was Mighty Mascots, and the other story was me taking a shot at public domain characters. So
Cool.
it was the time traveler from the Time Machine book by H.G. Wells, which is a
Right.
public domain character, and the story was centered around his son trying to find him and who was lost in the time stream. And of course, like Sherlock Holmes shows up, and it was called Time Traveling Team Ups. So the premise was to take the time traveler's son and team him up with different public domain characters out of history, you know.
Oh, that's
He's gonna
cool.
have them team up with like the Three Musketeers, you know, you name it, you know, you name any character in public domain, like King Arthur, things like that, you know. So
Right.
that one's kind of fun, you know.
Huh.
So hopefully get back to that one at some point too. I think that would be a fun book to return to.
Right.
But I
And
like
so,
wanted to challenge myself to write other things besides comedy and, you know,
right.
superhero stuff. So
So, so where do you have time to do all your projects?
well, I work part time, so that helps. But I feel like so the pandemic, in a weird way, helped me get
Wow.
to a
Okay.
good point with my comic stuff, and I hate to say that with because there was so much suffering and bad stuff happening during the pandemic, but it was funny. Like the first month of the pandemic, when everybody was like uncertain of everything, I was like launching my first campaign for Mighty Mascots. And it was like a month into the pandemic. And I'm like, do I launch this thing? Or, you know, I felt weird about it, like, because it's like everyone's not working and this and that. And, but it ended up being the perfect time to do it because there wasn't a
Mm.
lot going on. So my campaign did really well. I think we hit almost 18 or 19 grand on the campaign, which is crazy, you
Wow.
know?
Yeah.
And that kind of set me up to a point where I I mean I can't not work. Like I need to have some money coming in, you know, so but it set me up to a point where between that and doing Plastic City, I was able to kind of go to a part-time status.
Right.
So I work at a comic store part-time, one-stop shop in Clinton, Mass. Shout out to them. But like I work there like 3 days a week. You know, I make enough money to pay my half of the bills. And then any
Mm.
other money I make is I'm also a letterer for hire. So I
Oh,
do that
cool.
freelance style. So if you ever need a letterer, let me know. So I do that on the side, and then I also do Plastic City, and I also sell my book. So between all
Right.
of those, I'm doing okay. And of course, I'm
Right.
trying to get my YouTube channel up to 1,000 subscribers so I can start making that work for me a little bit with money. You know, I know it's not a
Right.
ton of money, but any little bit you got coming in helps. You know, so we're getting
Right.
there. We're almost at 900 subscribers, so it's taken. You know how the grind is with YouTube. You know,
Yeah.
so but yeah. So between all that, I've been the pandemic kind of helped me get into a position where I could leave a full-time job and kind of right now I'm getting by. We'll see how it is in a year, see if I have to go back to a full-time job. But right now, it seems okay. I've gotten work. I'm doing a 300-page graphic novel for lettering right now, so that should carry me all the way through the spring hopefully, and then we'll see what happens from there, you know.
Right.
So so yeah, so it's been good. It's been good, you know.
Right.
So I got
Awesome.
one foot in the working in the dream job, I guess, so doing
Right.
stuff I like.
And working part time at a comic shop, so that you
Yeah,
kind of
that's
are
fun
living the
too. Yeah.
dream.
Kind of
Yeah.
keep I can see, what's selling. I can kind of be there when there's trends and things like that.
Right.
Kind of
Yeah.
help the store become successful you know,
Right.
and they don't really give a great discount on stuff, so I'm not there for the discount, but like, I could pick up stuff that I might not have seen, on when I do my comic orders. So it's kind of cool.
Right.
And you
And
meet
so
like-minded people.
that's true. Yeah. So Keith, if people want to learn more about your work, where is the best place they could go to?
Well, for social media, Twitter, or X, as whatever you want to call it now, is probably the best place to find me. I probably I post something up most daily there. So my handle there is Reckless Gleason, which is like the part of my production name, which is Reckless Sidekick Productions. And I also have a website. You can either go to heronb.com or recklesssidekick.com and bring you both to the same place. And that has all my books. It has write-ups of everything, so you can see all the body of work. It also has one of the things is my lettering work. If you go to the menu, you can see the pages I've lettered and what my lettering looks like. So if you need a
Okay.
letterer, you can, I put some of the pages I've done, and different sound effects and stuff that I've made, and different books I've worked
Nice.
on. Yeah, so it's I like doing lettering. I know a lot of people find it boring, but I don't know. I feel like lettering is sort of like editing a movie. Like you're putting
Right.
the final touches on the comic, And I
Right.
just have a lot of the pages are from Mighty Mascots, so you can see some of the artwork there too. So yeah, it's
Wow,
a lot
that's
of
some
fun.
really good lettering. Yeah, that's
Oh,
really
thank you,
good.
man. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I learned from just reading, and it's like I'll read a comic and I'll see the way some of the professionals letter pages, and I'm like, ooh, I like that, and I'll kind of add that into my my repertoire, I guess,
Yeah.
and then I'm starting to get work from it, which is good. Like I've lettered a couple of cool projects. um I did some stuff for Invader Comics, which is like one of those like super indie labels, and
Yeah.
I've done some stuff for like there's this band called Ninja Sex Party. I guess they're kind of famous. They were on Conan O'Brien and some other places. I did some lettering work for their comic book, and there's a few other ones. I'm just blanking on them right now,
Right.
yeah. So I I'm slowly getting some work and getting my name out there, So
Excellent. That's
thanks.
perfect, Keith. So a good place. So heroenvy.com is a good spot where they can kind of see any of your work there. Also all the comics that you've been producing there as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. And there's also links to if you ever want to watch the old webisodes we made for Hero Evan. But
That's
warning, they are
awesome.
PC. They're not PC, and don't
Right.
cancel me over it. It's from a different time and era, So
That's right. Yeah.
and the
Perfect.
references we make in the episode will tell you how old it is. Like I think there's an episode where they're going to see the Serenity movie. I mean, how many years ago was that? Was that
Yeah, it
like
was a long time
2000 or
ago.
something? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Cool.
yeah, it was fun, man. It's been a fun ride to get to here. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I think the few
Perfect.
things
What
I would change along the way. I wish I had started our YouTube channel 10 years ago versus like 3 years ago. So
right. Yeah.
that would put us in a nice place. But we're getting there. We're getting
You're
there.
getting there. Yeah. Excellent. So people can check it out. They can actually see the link also to subscribe to your YouTube channel as well. Is
Yes, I
on there.
believe I don't know if I'd have to check that main page, but I think it has all our links. I think. Reach out. We'll have you on Indie Comics Relay live stream again. We had a great
Yeah.
discussion about the radio stations and everything when you were on. That was
That was
great.
such a fun. Yeah, that was such a great time. So yeah. So yeah, so definitely for those that are listening or watching, check out Indie Comics Relay, and I'll put a link in the show notes of the interview I was on for that too. So that
Yeah,
was fun.
absolutely. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
good one. So yeah, definitely people can check that out. That
Yeah.
was really fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Keith.
Thank you.
Like,
It
how
was
did
like, well,
what?
go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I was
So
gonna.
what?